IVM.
Welcome to episode 130 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. We are very excited today because we are exactly 8 days away from the IPL. It's going to be a great season. I know Fantasy Dream 11 is out already. We're starting to make our leagues. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show for all the listeners. But I want to welcome Ashwin and DJ. Ashwin, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. We've just launched our Edges and Sledges Listener Fantasy League. Most of all, I'm loving the social media game from all of the franchises this year. There have been behind-the-scenes footage, net footage. It's been awesome. So as though we needed more to get excited about the IPL, they've just done an amazing job this year.
Yeah, actually, that's interesting you said that because I've been following all of them. The Nets footage is amazing. They're literally taking videos of every catch, every six, every wicket. They've got the coaches watching along. I saw Anil Kumble actually bowled one of the deliveries in the Nets. DJ, have you been following this?
Yeah, I watched the little clip that the RCB put out, right, with Parthiv Patel giving commentary with a head, with a GoPro on his helmet, hitting fours and stuff. And then there was a run-out appeal, and he goes running, and he's like, no, in. Like, it's literally like every kid has always done that in gully cricket and street cricket. So it really struck a chord, man. It was good. Of course, Kohli was all out there as well. I think Cattage is their coach. AB de Villiers was giving Parthiv tips from behind the stumps. Yeah, de Villiers was keeping wicket. So, yeah, man, excitement's building. This is the last show, right, before the IPL actually starts. So the next time we do the show, the IPL, the Dream 11 IPL 2020 would have kicked off, man. Incredible.
Yeah. And what a time that is. Like, I think after 18 months, we're having the IPL. We've never had that long a break before. And for all our listeners, last week we did something interesting, which we're going to continue this week. Last week we discussed the four teams, Rajasthan Royals, Mumbai Indians, RCB and KKR. And we did something a little different in the sense that we didn't go through our, all of our playing 11s. We kind of picked out who are the common guys that all three of us think should be in the playing 11. And then we debated a little bit on the choices that all of us had separate, right? And I think that's the nature of the IPL, where with pretty much all teams, you will have 6 players or so that are common and the rest 5 are pretty subjective. So we hope you enjoyed last week's episode. This week, we're going to start talking about the balanced 4 teams, which is the Chennai Super Kings, Delhi Capitals, Sunrisers Hyderabad, and Kings 11 Punjab. I think with all that's gone on,
You managed to name all 4 teams, by the way.
I did, man. After getting some Twitter and hate about forgetting the team names, I've written them all down in front of me and taken this very seriously.
You should get them tattooed all over your body like Amir Khan did in that movie.
That's a good idea. While I'm watching the game, I can look at my left hand and see who's the team that's playing. But yeah, I was going to say that even though we are a Delhi Capitals kind of podcast and 3 fans, I think it's just out of respect. We got to start with Chennai Super Kings, right? All for Thala. And so Chennai has kind of recovered from that whole COVID-19 fiasco that they went through. Deepak Chahar, I believe, was the player who was, diagnosed with COVID-19. So he's out. And I think the team generally, as I was going through it, I see that, without a Raina and a Harbhajan Singh, there seems to be a little bit of a gap, especially in that batting lineup for me, because Raina has held the number 3 position always. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start walking through the players that all of us have in common. And I think those are Shane Watson, Ambati Rayudu, Kedar Jadhav, Dhoni, Bravo, Jadeja, surprisingly Shardul Thakur, and Deepak Chahar. So these are the 6 or 7 players that all of us had in common. Ashwin, I'm going to come to you first. Tell me a little bit about the team that you selected and who are the players that, are not mentioned. I know you've got Tahir. I know you have a Vijay in there. Talk us through the selections.
Yeah, to be honest, I was surprised. I fully expected, I didn't go through both of your squads in detail before we started recording, but I thought this was the team for me that kind of selected itself, right? Faf and Watson opening. I mean, I wouldn't look past that opening pair. I think they did an amazing job last year. They were backed all the way through. So one of you guys didn't have Faf. So for me, Faf and Watson opening. The number 3 slot, I think, is interesting, where Vijay, to me, slots in where Raina, he's not the T20 player Raina was, but that's going to be a gap they're going to struggle with. a little bit. And then I think, what did we say? Raidu, Dhoni, Kedar, Bravo were all constant. As was Jadeja, right? Did you say Jadeja was consistent? With all
I didn't actually. I should have said Jadeja. Yes, Jadeja was.
Okay, got it. And so then at the bottom, I mean, I think DJ talked a little about this on last week's show, but recency bias, etc. But Imran Tahir, phenomenal for CSK last year, absolutely phenomenal in the CPL as well. So a no-brainer for me. So actually, this side pretty much almost selected itself for me. I could see playing around with that number 3 slot, bringing in Ruturaj Gaikwad or one of the younger guys. I know both of you guys had Josh Hazelwood, so I'd love to talk about that. But Faf and Watson at the top of the order, no-brainer for me.
Interesting. So I think, Ashwin, I also had Faf and Watson at the top of the order. Number 3 was a huge issue for me. Like, I've just watched 12 years of IPL with Raina at number 3. It's very difficult for me to digest having anyone else there. I personally picked Raidu. I think because Dhoni likes the biryani from Raidu's house better than Vijay. I don't think Vijay would have given him much biryani. But I pretty much had Raidu. Sorry, I've just cracked myself up, and both of you are on mute. So I don't know if you found it funny or not.
We can do the respectful thing and unmute to laugh. We'll do that.
Yeah, no, it was just too funny in my head, so I couldn't continue. Anyway, getting back my train of thought. I think, Ashwin, you talked about Josh Hazelwood. I actually realized I had 5 overseas players in my team when I first created it. I've put Ngidi there. And the reason for me is when you've got a Shardul Thakur and a Deepak Chahar, I felt like you need an overseas pacer to be able to just give that little bit of balance to the bowling attack, right? Because I think Piyush Chawla and Jadeja are extremely kind of experienced players. DJ, I want you to talk through that a little bit, the bowling lineup for Chennai.
Yeah, so you guys both picked Faf to open the batting. I actually picked Ambati to open the batting with Water. And Ambati...
And he's done that for Bombay before, if I'm not mistaken.
And for Chennai, he had a huge season for Chennai in 2018, right? Opening the batting. He got like 600 runs, he even scored 100 for them. So yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at his 2018 stats. 16 games, 2 not out, 602 runs, 100 and an average of 43 at a strike rate of 150, man. I mean, Faf, great bat, but takes up an overseas slot for me. And as you said, you picked 5, obviously, but I went with Hazelwood and Tahir as the bowlers. Tahir, Ashwin says recency bias. There is, when we say recency bias, are we saying recency bias or are we saying good form, right? That's how we probably need to look at it. If a player's in good form, you pick him, right?
Can I ask you, did you pick him because he's the only one who truly respects social distancing on the field after he takes a wicket?
I mean, the celebrations are incredible, man. But he's played every season. Last few seasons, he's definitely played, right, for CSK. So, and for me, Piyush Chawla doesn't make the cut, man, because if you've got Tahir in the 11, is Chawla going to give you anything more? I mean, he's another wrist spinner, not as good, I'd say, as although he's a World Cup winner, not as good as Tahir. So I went with Tahir, Hazelwood, Chahar and Shardi plus Jadeja plus Bravo plus even Kedar Jadhav can roll his arm over, man. So anyone from in that squad 5 downwards, I'm just looking, Keja, Bravo, Jadeja, Shardi, Chahar, Hazelwood and Tahir, all of them can bowl. And I think you said that Chahar was out, but he's actually back in because I think he's tested negative, so he can rejoin the squad.
Yeah, I meant out in terms of he's back out into the real world after being in quarantine.
I mean, how things have changed, right? Incredible. But that's why I didn't pick Faf, and that was a tough one for me to leave out. And Ngidi, similar. I can see Ngidi or Hazelwood playing depending on who they like the look of.
And DJ, can either of you actually tell me anything about Gaikwad? Because I have not heard of him. In fact, the only thing I know is that he was the second player to get COVID-19. So I believe, DJ, you had him in your team.
Yeah, so I had him at 3 because there has been a lot of chat about this guy. He did really well in the Syed Mushtaq Ali trophy. He was the highest run getter for Maharashtra in the league stage of the 2018-2019. He went for his base price, but there's been quite a lot of good chatter about this guy. He's quite young. He's 97 born, so that makes him, 23, right? So, I mean, we've seen the CSK, a team full of lots of old legs. So maybe they could do with some fresh blood, or they could choose to go the other way and get an experienced guy like Vijay, who's played for them before and scored 100 for them before, to bat 3. But I'd like to see Gaikwad in at 3.
Yeah, DJ, I'll just quickly add. I actually heard of him through India A. So he was selected for the India A squad, I think last year or 2 years ago. And there was one match where he made 187 while opening, not out, and that's where I heard all the news about him, and that's kind of how he shot into the limelight for me.
Yeah, so tough choice for them, right? Do they bring the average age down by selecting him, or do they keep it up by selecting over 30, Vijay?
Yeah, no, I really do hope that Gaikwad plays, right? Because this team does need the young blood, as DJ said. But Ashwin, let me ask you, there's been a lot of chat going on about whether Dhoni should bat up the order given Raina is out. I mean, you and I both have pretty strong opinions about Dhoni at the end in the last couple of years. Any thoughts about Dhoni batting up the order for CSK?
It's a tough one, right? I think what he's started to do later in his career is flex his position in the batting order just based on the match situation. And I think he'll do that again this year, right? I think they lose early wickets, they need him to consolidate, etc. He can probably step up and do it. So I do not think he would be on the batting scorecard as a number 3 or 4. I think he'll probably stay as number 5. It's worth noting he's batted a lot at 4 for CSK, right? He averages 50 at number 5, but averages 37 at number 4. So, of course, that's 10 plus years of data, but it's worth... I think the data is there that he can play 4 or 5. He also averages nearly 38 batting at number 6. So he can play pretty much anywhere. I don't think he'll start the series on the scorecard at number 4. He'll probably start at 5, but expect him to get promoted when that match situation dictates it.
Yeah, what about bringing him in at 3? Take him back all the way to the start of his incredible career. I mean, maybe he can grow his hair as well in the course of the IPL.
That was the debate, right? A lot of people said Dhoni at 3. But I think the way the CSK team is set up and the way I built my team, if you've got a Watson and a Faf up top, I think Dhoni is needed more at the towards the end of the innings. I think CSK, the whole kind of fabric of their team depends a lot on Dhoni being there at the end and then them believing that they can do anything when that man is there. So I personally think if they play a Watson and a Faf up top, even Raidu for that matter, Dhoni is going to play down.
And can I just ask both of you guys, because obviously there's no debate about Kedar Jadhav or Shadi. Both of your favorite picks, guys, come on. Are there spots in danger or are they 100% sure shots to play these games? All of them. Starting 11, Varun?
Yeah, I think that's pretty sure shot, man. I think Kedar's bowling is what's going to change the game for CSK this year.
So Kedar for 2027? Ashwin? Shadi?
Yeah, I mean, they do have a couple of other young Indian quicks that they could look to. I think Shardul has delivered results for them. And I don't, because I don't think they're going to play Hazelwood, they're going to go for the slightly more experienced Indian quicks. And so that's where that comes in for me.
Right, so there we discussed the CSK team, and I think they'll be an interesting team to watch out. I think one of the most successful franchises in IPL history. And now let's move on to our favorite team, the Delhi Capitals. So guys, because we are pretty much all 3 Delhi Capital fans, I'm going to ask us each to kind of run through our own order and team and give our justification, right? So for Delhi, I think we have an exception where we can do it. I'm going to start. I think Dhawan and Shaw to open, no doubt about that. Now, here's where my team is a little different, and I have a feeling Ashwin and DJ are going to rip into me for this, but let's go with it. I've put Stoinis at 3. I can't remember the stats exactly, but I believe he had a fantastic last 1 or 2 BBLs when he batted up the order. And so I've put Stoinis at 3. I've put Iyer at 4. That's the position that he believes he deserves and he belongs. I've then put Pant at 5. Because again, I read that Pant's strike rate in the last few overs of the IPL games is the best. I think there's been a lot of discussion around Pant higher up the order, but I think if Delhi Capitals and Pant can come to that agreement that, look, we want you there to finish off the match, go out there, do your thing, let's win this tournament, I think Pant at 5. I've then put Alex Carey at 6 because it's a personal bias. I really like the guy. I put Kimo Paul at 7. I've got R. Ashwin at 8. Mohit Sharma at 9, Amit Mishra, and then Rabada. So that's my team, guys. Ashwin, I'm going to come to you. Walk us through your team.
Yeah, so not that dissimilar, right? I started with Shaw and Dhawan as well. I'm actually not going to rip into you for Stoinis at 3 because I thought about it a lot and I've talked about it. I think last week's episode, even when we were on the Cricket Badger podcast to talk about the IPL preview, I talked about Stoinis up the top of the order a lot. And even as we record this, he's playing for Australia. He's batting at 3 in the ODIs. So I think it's a good idea. I didn't have that. So I had Shaw and Dhawan. I had Iyer at 3, Pant at 4. Then I have Hetmeyer coming in at 5 with Stoinis at 6. I think they'll flex those two based on match situation, etc. I have Ashwin at 7, Rabada at 8. And then I have Lamichhane, Amit Mishra, and Ishant to slot in. So again, DJ, I like the way you articulated, but going on form, I think honestly we've said this for a couple of years now. Before every IPL I have said you cannot leave out Sandeep Lamichhane. It is especially true in the UAE where they're going to be turning tracks. He is an outstanding talent. So for me, he is my second most certain overseas slot, just behind Rabada. I think you could play around with Stoinis, Hetmeyer, Chemo Paul, all those other guys. But anyway, that's my 11. I think Stoinis bats down the order to start. I think if he's weak, just because he's the only batsman we have who can give you 4 overs, they will try moving him around the order, but they'll persist with him for a little bit.
Yeah, so Ashwin, that's interesting. I mean, I agree with all your points. I think in an ideal world, all of us would love to see Lamichhane playing. It's just that, to me, I didn't put him in the team because I somehow tried to build this realistic team where I think when you've got an Amit Mishra and an R. Ashwin, you're not going to find space to play Lamichhane. And I know he's played for Delhi in the past, but if I had to take a guess, I would say he's played 2, 3, 4 games in a season maximum. And so I really, really do hope that Delhi see his value and they can come up with it. But let's see, man. They've brought R. Ashwin in for a reason. DJ, any thoughts on that?
Just to quickly mention on that, your team has 4 seaming bowling options if you consider Chemo Paul seam, and only 2 spin. And I just believe, based on what we know over UAE, in the UAE, maybe not in the first couple of matches, but teams are all going to need at least 3 spin options, maybe 4, and that's part of the other barrier for me.
Interesting. Yeah. DJ, why don't you walk us through your team and give us your opinion on Delhi Capitals?
Yes, so I've got Shikhar Dhawan opening the batting along with Prithvi Shaw, left hand, right hand. I've got boy Rishabh Pant batting at 3, man. I mean, he had his best season for Delhi batting at 3. I've always maintained he's batting too far down the order. He's not a Dhoni. We have to remember that. He's a Rishabh Pant. He's a guy who bats up the order. He's done that his whole life. And, I mean, getting him to finish games for Delhi and India, it requires a level of maturity which our boy doesn't have as yet. And, I mean, the more we bat him out of place, the more frustrated we're going to get with him, right? So I'd like to have Pant at 3, where he's batting in the power play if we lose an early wicket, or he's got stuff to come behind him. He's not the last line of defense, basically. He's not got the maturity of a Dhoni at this stage, or even a Iyer at this stage. So I've got Iyer at 4, Captain Iyer. I've got Hetmeyer at 5. I think he can really accelerate if needed, left hand as well. And then I've got a toss-up between Chemo Paul.
I thought you also had something about Chennai in your...
No, Lecce, which is
Lecce.
Yeah, so I've got Chemo Paul in at 6, or Marcus Stoinis. Now, I think either of them are okay, man. Like, I don't think I rate either of them higher than the other. And frankly, if Stoinis is not going to bat up the order, then I'd rather have Chemo Paul in the team. Then I've got Ashwin at 7. He's going to be a great addition, I think, to the Delhi Capitals. And then I would probably play Aksar at 8 for the left-hand option, followed by a wrist spin of Lamichhane, and Rabada and Ishant being the quicks. So that is the team that I've come up with. There are some big names that haven't made it. Amit Mishra being one of them, right? I mean, what a legend he's been for Delhi Capitals over the years and Delhi Daredevils over the years. So he doesn't make it to the team. Plus, Alex Carey, he scored 3 runs in the last 2 T20s he played. Didn't play the third one, and today he scored 10 in the ODI. So he is not in form. So I would leave him out of my squad to start with.
But he's doing better, right? He's gone from single digits to double digits. So that's like a 10x increase.
Correct. So if that's how he's making your team, then good luck, bro.
No, I remember I sent both of you a message saying, I think Alex Carey is going to be game-changing for Delhi this season and that kind of stuff. And ever since I sent...
When we picked him, yeah, he was the next big hope.
No, I mean, I even sent it 2 weeks ago, right? I sent it when Australia was playing their practice games and he had a century. And so I think I don't know Carey well enough to be able to understand his game or what the issue is, but I truly believe he's a great batsman. I think he's the Michael Bevan Dhoni type of finisher, and so that's why when DJ spoke about the Pant's maturity at the end, 100% agree, and I thought that's where you have somebody like an Alex Carey to work with the Pant in the last few overs, but. Look, they're both left-handers. It'll be interesting to see. I think all three of us have, some element of hope in this team that we want to see, right? Whether it's the players, whether it's the batting position. So it'll be very interesting to see what position these guys bat at. DJ, I want to ask you, you've got Akshar Patel in your team as well. Now, is that purely from an all-rounder perspective? I mean, Akshar Patel is good, but...
Yeah, so Akshar Patel, just because he provides that spin option, the left arm variety, right? Like we've got Lami Chane to bowl the wrist spin stuff. We've got Ashwin to bowl the off spin. And then Akshar gives you the left arm option. So it's just about covering more bases than otherwise, right? And Akshar can bat. He's not a great batsman, but he can hold a bat. And he's played some useful innings in the IPL. So I like that balance that Akshar provides to the team. He's... I would pick him ahead of the Aveshes and the Harshvals of the world, just because. Plus, he's played for India. He's got experience, and I mean, what is this? Is his 6th or 7th IPL? So it's time for him to come good, man. And what better time to come good than for the Delhi Capitals?
Interesting. And Ashwin, let's talk through just Ishan Sharma versus Mohit Sharma. Both you and DJ picked Ishant. What's the kind of thinking through that?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have the latest data on Mohit or what he's done recently. I'm just trying to pull it up as we speak. But I mean, Ishant has been he is a pace spearhead. Yes, he only plays Test cricket for India, but he's an outstanding talent. I know in partnership with Rabada, he's just a smart thinking cricketer who can, likely just step up when this match situation calls. So I pulled it up, by the way. Mohit Sharma played the match last year for Chennai, took 1 for 27. Before that, the last time he played was November of 2018. So we're talking about a nearly 2-year gap since he last played first-class cricket or any cricket at this level, right? So I'm not sure, unless they've seen something spectacular in the nets, which I haven't seen from a bowling video standpoint by the Delhi social media team. I just don't think Mohit is match fit even or has the games under his belt to be ready.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point. And I'm going to ask both of you. So Ashwin, why don't you go first? No Ajinkya Rahane in this team. Do you think he's going to get a game all season?
I do. I think he'll play at some point. I think it's going to depend on how the top 5 do. I don't think he'll start. I think Delhi has used him a lot on social media. There's a whole video of him. But, honestly, I don't know if you guys watched it. There's a Nets video of him where Ponting is watching and they're just showing him in the nets. And even in that net, by the way, Rishabh Pant is on one side of him, Shaw is on the other. And you can't see them, but you're constantly hearing in the background, you can see the balls flying and you can constantly hear somebody saying, shot Rishabh or shot Prithvi. And Rahane is just defending or just nurdling the ball into the covers or playing gentle. So just based on how the team structures itself and what they're looking for, he will come in at some point in the season. I don't see him starting. Just if there was no Dhawan, he would have opened to start, no question. But Dhawan just edges out that slot for him.
Yeah, interesting. DJ, I want to get your perspective as well because I think Ajinkya Rahane at opening, Shikhar Dhawan is better than him. Ajinkya Rahane at number 4, Shreyas Iyer is better than him. So it almost feels like he's a backup for both positions, but I mean, unless something drastically goes wrong with the Delhi top 4 or 5 batting order, I don't see how this guy's going to come into the team.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, when he moved from the Rajasthan Royals, right, this is what we were thinking, like, where is he going to bat in this Delhi Capitals lineup? You're just like, it's got Shikhar, it's got Shaw, it's got Pant, it's got Iyer. Those are the top 4. They are performing reasonably well over the years. And, I mean, he's not someone who can come in at the end and smash it, right? But although he has said that, if he needs to bat at 6, he's open to that and all of that stuff. But he is a backup. To my mind, if someone like Shaw gets injured or is out of form and is unable to score runs, that's when I see his chance. Somebody basically going out of form or being injured, and that's when Rahane will step up. But I mean, over the years, he's batted up. He's opened the batting for the Rajasthan Royals, and that's really been his only spot where he scored runs, albeit at quite a slow strike rate. So I think it's a tough sell for him. Last year he scored a few runs for the Rajasthan Royals. His career strike rate is 121 though, and that's batting in the power play up top. So I think it'll be challenging to fit him into the squad, into the 11 actually.
Yeah, DJ, I am actually going towards your side. I 100% agree with what you've said. And I think, I mean, that's it. Let's see if Ajinkya Rahane gets a game. If he does, I hope he comes good. But I find it tough that, to see him getting a game right now, at least in the early part. So that was the Delhi Capitals. We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to be right back to discuss the Sunrisers Hyderabad as well as Kings 11 Punjab teams.
Welcome, everybody, to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel. It's been a great week on the network this week. If you haven't been paying attention, please do listen to some of the shows. We had Chetan Bhagat. This was the first returning guest on Cyrus Says. Do check that out. Great episode. We had Palak Zatakia on Advertising is Dead. Really interesting conversation was had with Varun. We had another crossover on the habit coach. Zarina Poonawala showed up over there to have a discussion with Ashton about anxiety and pressure. Begin the Journey with Ashi Vidyarthi continues to kill it. Please definitely do check it out. An old friend, Vijay Koshi, was on Storytellers and Storysellers. Do check that out as well. And I'd like to mention one thing. If you're a Tamil speaker, you should definitely check out our podcast, Kadai Podcast Punyan Selvan. Kavita Jiva has done a fantastic job to finish up her first story. It is the last episode which just came out last Monday. Do check it out if you speak Tamil. It is an incredible achievement. Please do check that out. And with that, let's get you onto your show.
Welcome back from the break. So we discussed the Delhi Capitals and the Chennai Super Kings team. I'm now going to discuss Sunrisers Hyderabad, which is a team that has done quite well. And I think they're going to be, I think they've got top-class overseas players. And I think where they're going to struggle a little bit is with their Indian core. So let's go through the common players that all of us picked. We all had Bairstow. We had Warner. We all had Manish Pandey, Priyam Garg. I think we all had Rashid Khan, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Sandeep Sharma, and Khalil Ahmed. So, Ashwin, let me ask you first. No Kane Williamson. Kane Williamson has done pretty well in the IPL.
Yeah, really tough spot. I mentioned this earlier when we were on another podcast, but very, very difficult to leave him out. But I remember last year, the big change was last year, Williamson actually was skipper and at some point dropped himself just because it didn't make sense. He wasn't in great form, but it didn't make sense for the combination and the structure of their side. So this year, the big change for Hyderabad is that Warner is back to being skipper, which means they're not in this awkward position where the captain has to potentially drop himself, assuming Warner plays well, which history dictates that he will. So I think Warner and Bairstow at the top of the order, no-brainer. Rashid Khan, absolutely no-brainer as well. I mean, he's a shoo-in to any 11. And then the question becomes, who do you play as the fourth overseas side? You could play Kane to strengthen up your batting. I went with a wild card pick on this one. So I had a number 6. Obviously, the obvious choice is Mohammad Nabi, who's had a great CPL, good all-round talent. I went with Fabian Allen, and there have been lots of videos in the nets recently of him just smashing the ball out of the park and gives you some useful spin, again, helpful in the UAE. So, tough call, really tough call to leave out Williamson. I do think, like Rahane, he'll get a game at some point, but probably not to start.
So, Ashwin, Fabian Allen is interesting. I haven't heard of this guy. Is he like an Andre Russell type player? Is he an all-rounder?
Yeah, he's an under Russell type of player, basically huge hitter of the ball. Unfortunately injured recently, so missed out on this year's CPL. So we haven't seen him in action much, but there was a very deliberate video posted by the Hyderabad team of him smashing sixes in the nets. So a big purchase for them, just potentially a big talent. So again, a little bit of a wild card, untested in the IPL, but has the potential to be huge in a team where you have your firepower at the top, you have reliable Indian middle order. Having Rashid Khan and Fabian Allen as big hitters come in at 6 and 7 is just a rock solid 7 for me.
Yeah, and Ashwin, I like that wild card. Even when we play fantasy, you're known to always pick the guys that nobody else has heard of or nobody's going to pick. So I really like this pick of yours, and especially because I think, in the team you've selected, you've got Manish Pandey at 3, Priyam Garg at 4, and Vijay Shankar at 5. And I think Manish Pandey is great. I know you're a huge fan of his, but when you've got a 4 and 5 as Priyam Garg and Vijay Shankar, I think somebody like Fabian Allen is probably needed, because when you're chasing or when you need to set that big total and you have 3 overs to make, let's say, 30, 40 runs, I don't think Priyam Garg and Vijay Shankar are going to do that. So it's interesting that, you picked that kind of a player. DJ, walk us through your kind of middle order with Sunrisers Hyderabad, right? You've also got Pandey at 3. You don't have Williamson. And you said you might play a guy called Virat Singh at number 5. Is that just because of the name Virat?
But I had either Priyam Garg, who's the captain of the Indian under-19 team, right, in the last World Cup, or Virat Singh. And apparently he's a big hitter, man. He plays for Jharkhand, and he did well in the domestic T20 league, ending up with like 140 plus strike rate, and he scored a few runs. So that's why basically it's a wild card, right? And that's one of the spots that I think is going to be tough. I think Shankar will probably bat 4. And either Priyam or this Virat Singh guy will bat 5 for them. And then I didn't pick Kane either, but it was not for lack of trying. Trust me. I tried to fit him in at 3, where its natural slot would be behind Warner and Bairstow. But then the bowling suddenly seemed really weak. They didn't have a 6th bowling option. So Nabi actually gives you that. And Nabi's a big hitter as well. I mean, we saw him against India, right, in the World Cup. He kind of took it to the last over with his big hitting, and Shami only got him out in the last over. So that's when we won. And he's been in great form, as Ashwin said, in the CPL. He's very experienced, played all over the world in all kinds of conditions, and he's useful, man. He picks up wickets with his off spin, and he pairs really well with someone like a Rashid. So for me, Nabi would bat at 6 or 7, and Rashid would follow him, plus Bhuvi, then Khalil Ahmed, then Sid Kaul. Saha may or may not bat. I don't know. He's the wicket keeper, but obviously.
So DJ, why have you picked Saha as your keeper when you've got Bairstow and played Saha at a number 6 position, even before Nabi? Just to get your thoughts on that.
Actually, that's a good point. I didn't realize that Bairstow could keep wicket, right? So maybe I can fit in another...
You forgot that Bairstow is a keeper.
Dude, England, are you really going to keep track of who can keep wicket?
That might be worse than senior forgetting that who are the names of the teams. I'm just saying to forget.
Bairstow is a made-up keeper, right? But anyway, like Butler is their keeper, Ben Foakes is their keeper, Bairstow is their keeper. So anyway, I totally blanked on Bairstow. But does he keep wicket for Sunrisers as well, or does Saha play?
No, I think Bairstow keeps wickets, as of my kind of memory. And Saha's done well, right? But Saha is like that Ajinkya Rahane type of batsman for me, where if you're playing him, you've got to open with him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point, right? Yeah, so maybe I can fit in another Indian batsman there. So maybe both Virat and Priyam both play, right? Because I'm looking at 2019 and Saha's only played 5 games. So you're right, Bairstow's probably kept wicket in those games. But it would have to be an Indian to take that slot. And maybe it's an Abhishek Sharma as well, a big hitting guy who, again, Delhi's let go. So as is the trend with Delhi letting people go, they go away and make runs somewhere else. So another slot for him. But you're right. Saha doesn't get a game then. Correct.
And Ashwin, let me ask you, again, my memory is nowhere close to DJ's, but whenever I've seen the Sunrisers Hyderabad play, I think they win 70% of their matches or so based on the top three's batting performance. But the minute those guys get out, it almost feels like an India semi-final problem. The middle order is just not strong enough to kind of win this. So do you think, Sunrisers Hyderabad is going to actively work on that? I mean, I think both of you actually have picked better teams than me, to be honest, because you all have addressed that problem area by not picking a Williamson. But I just feel like, Sunrisers really needs to work on that issue of the middle order.
Yeah, so I think you're spot on, right? As you think about top 3 being Warner, Bairstow, Manish, which is consistent with last year. The middle order last year was Vijay Shankar, who we all had, I think. Yusuf Pathan, who none of us had, right? Did I catch that correctly? None of us had him. He didn't even get selected.
No, he's not even in the squad. He's not in any squad for IPL.
Yeah, right. So Yusuf Pathan was at 5, which is incredibly weak for me, unfortunately. And then they had Shakib at 6. Who's obviously missing out this year, but that's going to be an interesting, right? Like that was a sure shot, and that's part of why Williamson missed out last year was who do you leave out from Warner, Bairstow, Shakib, and Rashid, right? And so Williamson might get a game this year, but on paper, and then Huda played at 7, I think. So on paper, not a bad middle order. I think they strengthen it just a tiny bit by potentially bringing in a Nabi type of player who is, maybe a big hitter, Nabi or Fabian Allen, and then I think that slot in the middle where Shakib would bat, where they have to bring in where Yusuf would bat, where they have to bring in an Indian player, that's going to be probably what makes or break their middle order, right? Where if it's a Priyam Garg, who, again, very strong reputation, and he can find form, Hyderabad looks like a great side.
So now we move to the most exciting team from my perspective, because I had a lot of fun when I looked at this team. I know there's going to be a lot of debate around this team, and it's the team that has the universe boss, right? So Kings 11 Punjab. Again, let me run through some of the players that we all had in common. Chris Gayle at the top with KL Rahul, Mayank Agarwal at number 3. All of us had Glenn Maxwell. We all had Krishnappa Gautam. We had Mujib, and we had Mohammad Shami. But here's where there are a lot of players that between the three of us, we've got different, right? So let me talk through my picks. I actually had Nicholas Pooran at number 4. I think he's a phenomenal batsman. Yes, you can argue that KL Rahul will keep, but I think Nicholas Pooran has done really well over the last few years in his batting itself. And so he deserves a slot in my team. I've got Sarfaraz Khan as well, that, the kid with that promise at batting at number 6 hopefully gives Glenn Maxwell some support. And and then I had Deepak Hooda as well in my team, mainly to, part-time bowler, part-time spinner. But I think potentially I may have made one error by picking Deepak Hooda and batting him down the order. DJ, I'm going to come to you. Talk us through your Kings 11 Punjab team.
Yeah, sure, man. I actually had a slightly different top 3. I had Mayank Agarwal opening with Chris Gayle. And I think that's because Mayank's opened his whole life. His best shot at scoring runs is, I think, at either 1 or 2, right? And I think KL is good enough to bat at 3. He's a big hitting player. He's captain. So I think in the interest of the team, he scored lots of runs for Punjab, but those haven't actually translated into those many wins. Right? We've often seen games where he's like 70, 80 not out and they've still lost the game, right? So I would like to see Rahul bat at 3. I've got Karun Nair batting at 4.
So DJ, before you go on, have you done that because Rahul is just an accommodating guy, and for India he's batted at 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Today he's now saying that I'll bat at number 5 for India. And do you think him being captain means that maybe he has a little bit more of say in the team and says, hey, I'm an opener, I want to open?
So he might want to do that, but I mean, in the interest of the team, he's got to look at the larger picture, right? He's got to look at where is Mayank Agarwal's best chance of succeeding. And I believe that they're best friends as well, and I believe that Mayank should bat with Chris Gayle, a big hitter like Chris Gayle up top. If Chris Gayle is playing, that is. I've got Chris Gayle in my team, but Rahul is a good enough player to bat at 3, whereas I think Mayank, I'm not saying he will struggle to bat at 3, but he may not be as effective if he has to come in the 8th over, right? Rahul is good enough to come in and start scoring immediately, whereas Mayank may take a little bit more time, whereas Mayank will have the power play to bat in otherwise. So it's a slightly difficult choice given his success. I mean, he's had incredible success. He scored the fastest 50 in the IPL, 15, 14 balls, right? But Kings 11 hasn't won, right? And that is what Rahul as a new captain will want to change. So maybe it'll start with him saying, okay, I'm going to sacrifice my slot for somebody else to see them do better and get the team to contribute more. So that was my thinking, to get him to bat 3 and Mayank to bat with Gayle to open the batting.
Very interesting. Awesome.
So I've got 4. I've got Karun Nair, obviously the triple centurion for India. At 5, I've got either Maxi, who today was smashing Jofra Archer for 6. So it's looking like the big show may be back in town, and the town being UAE, where he scored all his runs previously for Punjab, right? But I've also got Jimmy Neesham in that number 5 slot, depending on the pitch, right? And I think actually Maxi will play more because he bowls spin, and I don't know, for some reason we've all assumed that he's going to take spin because of the length of the tournament and how the UAE pitches behave. So I think Maxi is going to play at 5. I've got Sarfaraz at 6. I've got Chris Jordan, great death bowler. From my perspective, I mean, he's bowled even in that T20 World Cup final where Ben Stokes went for 4 sixes. Remember, Chris Jordan bowled the over before that and hardly went for anything. The other day, he bowled the penultimate over against Australia and hardly went for anything. Superb fielder, incredible athletic stuff for runouts. I mean, can bat as well. So I've got him at 7. I've got Krishnappa Gautam, who can also bat and bowl. So all-round player there at 8. Shami at 9. Ishan Porel, who plays for Bengal at 10. And I've got Mujibur Rahman, the 4th overseas, at 11. So that is my team for the Kings 11 Punjab. I've talked through the whole thing.
Awesome. Good. I mean, it's a very good team. Like I said, this was the most fun team for me to pick.
It was
Ashwin,
also
why
really
don't you?
hard because of the quality of the overseas, right? You had so many overseas, so many combinations you could pick. Like Puran was a hard guy to leave out, man.
Yeah, like for me, Chris Jordan was hard to leave out. But Ashwin, you picked Chris Jordan as well. Why don't you walk us through your team quickly?
Yeah, so actually pretty similar in many ways to DJ, right? Like Mayank, Gale, and Rahul as the top three. You can play around with the order. Karun at 4, Maxwell at 5. Again, not dissimilar. So I picked Huda at 6 more because of his, call it on paper, finishing abilities. Varun, one stat I want to quote to you, if you can give me a second, is Sarfaraz Khan, right? Incredibly difficult to leave out, right? Okay, Ranji Trophy is Test cricket. I got it. We give a Nutcut credit because of the Test season he had. In the 4 matches before the quarantine and lockdown happened, okay? So on the 19th of January, Sarfaraz Khan made 301, not out. 8 days later, he made 226, not out. And by the way, that match was rained out. He was on track to make another triple. The first ever batsman to make back-to-back triples in Ranji. 8 days later, he made 78 in one innings. And another 8 days later, on the 12th of Feb, he made 177. So I know it's now been 6 months, but talk about form, man. I think he could, and by the way, he had a bad season for Bangalore in the past, but I mean, he's 22. This guy's got a long career ahead of him. So anyway, all that to say, tough call to leave him out. I just went with Huda based on his kind of finishing ability, if you will, or history. And then I think my bowling was all the same, just in a different order, where I have Chris Jordan, Mujib, Shami, Gautam. And then I had Murugan Ashwin instead of Ishan Porel. Just the argument I've been making so far is just spin, and Murugan is experienced in the IPL.
Awesome. So there you have it, guys. That's all 8 teams over our 2 episodes. Remember, this is a fan's perspective. All of us are fans. We have picked the players we like to see. We've picked the players we would think would win these teams the IPL. But as they say, you have no idea what happens once they get on the field. It's a long tournament. I'm sure a lot of players are going to get a chance. And honestly, we're just really excited about it. And Ashwin, I'm going to ask you to just tell our listeners a little bit about the fantasy cricket league that the Edge and Sledges podcast is putting up. So Ashwin, go for it.
Yeah, so this our annual Edges and Sledges Listener League is now live. The best way to find it is just to go to our Twitter page, twitter.com/onetip1hand. We're playing on the official platform, so it's on the IPLT20.com website, powered by Dream 11. Great format. It's going to be a little different to last year. So as you go through the rules, etc., make sure you keep up. But so much fun. We all 3 of us play it actively. We will be talking about it every week on the show. We would love if you make your team. You have up until the first game to make as many changes as you want. So again, visit our Twitter page, twitter.com/onetip1hand or Twitter @onetip1hand. Check out the league code and join there. And if you want to engage in some banter with us during the fantasy league or as the IPL is going on or anything cricket, we've just launched a Discord channel as well. Great platform to just get together and chat. Lots of great chat on there. Thank you to those of you who've joined there already. Tell your friends, tell others about it. The more we have, the more great banter. So we look forward to seeing many of you in the Edges and Sledges Listener Fan League for the fantasy cricket.
And I absolutely love that Gautam has actually named his team after Kedar for 2023. Kedar Jadhav for 2023.
Just to spite Varun. I love it.
Just great. Super.
Awesome, guys. So, yes, when we're going to talk to you next, the IPL would have been started. DJ and Ashwin, I'm going to give you a 1 week heads up. We should all predict the orange and purple cap winners on next week's episode and then see how we go.
Well, we already did that, actually, Ashwin and I, on the Cricket Badger podcast. Yeah, so we've already
awesome. So, who did you guys pitch?
Wait, before you steal ours, do you want to go first? We'll put you on the spot. See who you think is going to be. Yeah. Orange and purple.
I need to think it through. I'm going to say, I think orange cap is for batting, right? So I'm going to say KL Rahul for the orange cap. And for the purple cap, let's go with Rabada.
Ooh, that's a big pick, man. So I went for David Warner for the orange cap. Because he's just so consistent and bats the whole innings for SRH. And I went for Jaydev Unnatkut for almost because he came on our podcast, so I really like him and I want him to win the purple cap.
I'm disappointed in both of you. We're called the Rishabh Pant show colloquially by fans, so I had to go with the orange cap to Rishabh Pant. I think
Varun wants him to bat at like 6 or 8 or something. So how is he going to win?
At 10 actually.
I had Rishabh Pant for the orange and I had Rashid Khan for the purple. I think he's going to have a monster season.
Awesome. So guys, we'll see you next week after the IPL has started. Thanks.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुड बॉल.
Presenting Football Should Ball, a show about three friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes 3, maybe even 5. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my 2 sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthika here.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Ha, just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Ayer. But you're a Fulham supporter. So whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumors, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Should Ball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.